Hey everybody, welcome to Sound Bombing. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Lamar Darnell Shields.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of the day it is. Welcome to another exciting edition of Sound Bombing. And of course, today I'm super excited because we just released our new logo, and I'm excited about the new logo. Thank you for all of my team members who worked on that. We will let you all see that logo. It's actually currently online, so thank you for my great designers and for my team. We're moving away from our old logo, and so we have a new logo with my face in the middle in between these headphones. I'm excited about that. Thanks for tuning in. If you listen to Norman McComb, who talked about losing his wife to Alzheimer's and difficulties with that, this guy was a jewel to work with. I mean, he received an award from Obama. President Obama, he received all of these patent awards. He's an inventor. So this guy was amazing. Norman taught me quite a bit. It was a very different interview from the typical people that we have on. But because he had a lot of information to share, I was excited to have him on. If you all notice, I am wearing my brand, the eyewear. Of course, I'm rocking the I Meditate. You're gonna figure out why why I'm wearing the shirt today, because our next guest is going to talk about the things that he's been doing around mindfulness and meditation. But if you're new to Sound Bombing community, welcome. If you are an old head, thank you for coming back. And if you are new, just to let you know, we are about to start our 3 breaths. We always start our show with the 3 breaths. That really creates the foundation for the day. You all know I'm an avid mindfulness teacher, lover of mindfulness and meditation. Been practicing it for a very, very long time, but always interested and excited to learn something new. So if you are new, welcome. If you are old, let's get set. Let's put our feet on the floor and put our hands on our lap with our palms facing up in a position of receiving, because there's this metaphor of me giving and you giving, not giving and taking. You know, this country talks about the give and take. It's not about give and take. It's about giving and receiving. And so the 3 breaths is what we do to set our foundation. So let's get started. We're going to roll our shoulders back. We're going to relax our face. Everything is soft. Everything is quiet. Your face is soft. Your eyes are soft. We're going to start with our first breath. Inhale. We're going to hold it for 3 seconds. Exhale. 2 more times. Then we're going to go for 5 seconds. Inhale. Hold it for 5. Exhale. Now we're going to go a little deeper. We're going to go for 10 seconds. Inhale. Let it out. What is that called? That is called the breath of life. So sound bombers, it is often said that sports are 90% mental and 10% physical. Did you hear what I said? 90% mental and 10% physical. But what are you doing to train your mind? What are you doing to train your mind? We know because of this pandemic, people are dealing with anxiety. People are anxious. People are just not taking care of themselves. They have this beautiful car and they're cleaning the car, but they're putting some of the worst things inside of the car, things that they should not be putting inside of their vehicle. And so again, but on the outside, it looks really, really good. But how much time do you spend training your body, getting to peak performance? With mindfulness training, you can train your mind learn how to focus more effectively, worry less, be more present, and increase your ability to respond and react quickly. Mindfulness can be the added edge to what you need to go that extra mile. And we know that our teachers are going back to school. We know our parents are dealing with a lot. We know that our frontline staff, our doctors are dealing with a lot. And we know that the research from when I was working at Johns Hopkins, we know what mindfulness does. But often the difference between reaching your goals and falling short can be a momentary lapse of focus, confidence, and or nerves getting the best of you. When we absorb in the present moment and absorb in our task, we play at our best. And athletes often refer to this as called getting in the zone. Getting in the zone. See, mindfulness provides us with the practical and proven way to focus and to ignore distracting thoughts or getting consumed to what if. This is why mindfulness has become so popular, not only just with people like me, but with professional athletes like LeBron, James, Derek Jeter, Misty May Trainer, Kerry Walsh. A lot of people are turning back to this ancient method of going inside. That's why I'm so excited that today our guest is Kristen Straka, who will share with us how building mental strength, not this right here, but building mental strength is just as important as spending countless hours working on physical shape alone. Well, who is Christian? I'm so glad that you asked, because some of you all may know him, some of you all may not. Christian has developed a unique approach to mindset training through methodologies for applying evidence-based. I love this. As a researcher, we're always talking about evidence-based mindfulness techniques in sports. Christian has been practicing mindfulness for many years, is a Unified Mindfulness L² Coach, a member of the Mindfulness Facilitation program at the great UCLA's Mindfulness Awareness Research Center, at the Semel Institute of Neuroscience and Human Behavior. As a coach for pro athletes, Christian has in-depth expertise in professional tennis. As a player on the international circuit, as well as a coach, he's traveled all over the country. He is also a mental performance coach of the Adidas TSP team. Of course, he's rocking the Adidas. You see what I'm rocking Puma. They got a relationship. Check it out. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Team, he broke a world running record for Los Angeles to Las Vegas. His unique approach to mindset is amazing, and I'm so glad that he's joining me today in the bomb shelter. Christian, welcome to the community. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well. After this intro, I'm doing amazing.
Man, let our listeners know where you are calling in from, and then let our listeners know how you are doing because of this pandemic, in lieu of the pandemic, rather.
Yeah, so I'm in LA, sunny LA. We're about to meet a heat wave. I think the hottest few days that I have experienced since I live here, like about a decade now. So it's going to get really nice and cozy, around 110 or something. And I'm doing pretty well, actually. I am very fortunate because I am able to carve out time to take care of myself, like you were saying at the very beginning, you take care of your body, you take care of your mind. So I am able to do both of those things. Therefore, I'm in a good spot, personally speaking, and professionally, also in a very good spot because I'm able to, really put in a lot of time and effort into the things that matter to me. Helping people and athletes to become their best versions in all of these different ways with all of these, mindfulness based techniques that allow the athletes to perform more frequently and more for longer periods of time at their optimal level. And, with all of these different projects that I'm part of or working on or creating, it's it's a lot of fun. It's very encouraging. You get a lot of positive feedback with all of the people that you're working with. And that is kind of the main experience that I'm having, even though COVID, is so much on everybody's mind. Mm-hmm. And of course, you read it in the news. It can be helpful if you stay informed, internationally and also just regionally, how good or bad is the virus kind of going? Is it intensifying? Is it decreasing? So I am aware of that information, trying to behave appropriately, not spending a lot of time indoors with other people.
Yes.
Basically none. I think I've only gone to like supermarkets in the last 7 months and nothing else indoors. But
Wow.
it's good. I'm not affected luckily in a negative way by the virus, really.
Well, man, thank you for joining me today. I mean, I know you have a busy schedule, and I'm sure that schedule is somewhat shifted because of COVID, man. So you have been an athlete for years. So, you have been training in a variety of sports, background in tennis. You work with some of the most amazing people out there. And of course, we know we have the tennis matches going on right now, just like the NBA, they're playing in a bubble. I think that they're in New York City, right? Aren't they playing in New York City? And I think they've already found one individual who sort of tested positive for COVID. It's kind of unfortunate trying to get away from that. Then The Rock just tested positive, his entire family. I just read that online yesterday. Let's talk about you as an athlete before we get into the work that you're doing. Let's talk about you as an athlete, what the sports that you were drawn to, and then how do you then shift from, being an athlete, then being a trainer, and then moving into the mindfulness space. Talk to me about your upbringing and your background.
Yeah, so I started, when I was very young, 4 years old. I started playing tennis just because my dad took me with him to the tennis court. He was playing. And then I was kind of having fun just as a little kid and was a little talented. So I improved quicker and kind of went through the ranks. When you're in whatever sport you're in as a young kid, if you have some either athletic ability or real passion for it, you kind of tend to excel a little faster, than just the average kids that don't like it as much, or maybe have their focus on other things. So that led to me being, playing national tournaments, international tournaments. And by the time I was 16, I decided to go full pro. And then I went to moved to Spain in order to, dedicate all of my time to practicing and using that as my base to travel from there. As a tennis player, you travel 10 to 11 months out of the year to go to different tournaments. But I was also compared to, what your listeners might know, the players that they might know are like the ones that really excel very quickly. They might be at the very top in the top 100 and the top 50, top 10 in the world by the time they're 18, 19, 20. But there's also a whole bunch of players that first go to college, like John Isner, and then they make it on the tour. So some people need a little bit more time to develop, and most of the time, what they need to develop is not their physical abilities. Of course, you keep evolving those keep improving, but it's just mentally, how ready are you? How good are you able to deal with those adversities? And I was also in that bucket. I was needing more time to develop those skills, but because I had physical issues. I had multiple injuries, broke my wrist, broke my hand, and this and that. I didn't really have enough time to create a momentum. And then I had a bigger injury where they removed the first rib on just here next to the neck.
Wait,
and
you said they removed the first rib?
Yeah, exactly.
From your
just
body.
Below the collarbone.
Hold on, let's back up. Why did they remove your rib, brother? What was that about?
I was playing for 1 year. My last year on the pro tour, I was having major issues in my arm, and I was not able to finish a lot of my matches or the tournaments. And in order to continue playing professionally, what the doctors and professionals kind of aligned on was I need to remove that rib. That's kind of what is causing that, to not go into too much medical details. And I was like, I didn't have an issue without playing. I just had an issue when I was playing all out. So I said, okay, I really want to do it, so I'm going to risk it. It's a kind of a big surgery. I did it. I did rehab for 4 months. You can't move your arm. They make an incision below your armpit, and then they go all the way in and then take the entire rib out. It's kind of intense. And then when I finished rehab and I had my first full tennis session again, the same back pain was back. So the whole surgery basically was not helpful. And that's the moment I decided I'm going to call it quits. for me as a player. And then I took half a year, but my mentor and coach kind of said, I think you might have a good way with athletes, and maybe look at coaching for yourself. Like, you might be good at that. So I was like, I never thought of that until that point in my life to ever coach. I never thought of anything what I would do after playing tennis, because that's all I ever thought about. But then I said, yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. I went through this whole process, and then as a coach, I actually excelled much quicker and became much more successful in a short period of time than as a player. As a player, I needed time, and as a coach, by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was coaching somebody who won a Grand Slam, and I was coaching somebody who's like going to the top 100. So I was like, at my age, nobody was even coaching at that point. Like, 25-year-olds are generally not coaching, not at that degree.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And while coaching, I started realizing how most people, regardless of if they're pro athletes, amateur athlete, beginners, they are struggling not with how good can they sometimes perform in their sport, but how frequently are they not able to perform as good as they sometimes can. So this discrepancy between what they know they can do and what they do most of the time is just frustrating to them all the time. They're getting upset, they're getting anxious beforehand because they know they're afraid they're not going to be able to perform as good as they know they can, right? So everybody reacts differently to not performing optimally. But the key was that the reason why they were not performing optimally was not because, they're not fit enough, their strokes are not good enough. It's all basically in their mind and how they're able to pay attention to what really matters, how they're able to deal with the challenges that are coming up in any given moment, external challenges, internal challenges. And once I realized that in pretty much every single athlete, then I made the correlation. I was like, it was the same for me. I was like, that can't be. And simultaneously, I figured out that actually, this is not just something that either you have or you don't have. You can actually develop this, which I did not know when I was a player. That nobody has ever told me that you can develop these mental skills. And then even if there's somebody would have told me, which nobody did, nobody knew how to develop them.
So do you think being a player really helped you transition into being a coach instead of just liking the sport and then going into coaching?
Very much. Of course, I don't think it's necessary to be like a professional player in some sport in order to be a good coach, but like you need some degree of experience. And whatever degree of experience you gain over those years will be tools that you can kind of take from when you're coaching. It's your personal experience. It's not just something that you read in a book. So that's definitely helpful, for sure. But at the same time, it's definitely not the only skill that you need as a coach. You can be a fantastic athlete and you cannot be a great coach at the same time.
So you said there were some things that you discovered that all players had in common, and there were some things that you saw within yourself that sort of carried them. What were some of those things that you discovered that many of those players had in common, and then how did you then sort of work with them to better develop them or to actually identify with them? Because again, a lot of times as a coach, let's just say a life coach, let's just say an athletic coach, let's say a teacher or a parent, we see things in our clients, our children, the people that we work with, but they don't see them. What were some of those things that you actually saw? And then how did you then sort of get them to then notice those things that you saw? And then how did you then elevate whatever that it is that you saw in them?
Well, there's a step in between, actually.
So I missed a step, man.
You missed a step. Well, just in terms of my experience, okay, how that went. So I started seeing what the issue was, okay?
And what was that issue? What was the issue? What was like the...
So the issue...
Is there a universal issue?
Many issues.
Okay.
Let's not go into all of them. But one of the issue is that there is an emotion that somebody's experiencing. most of the time it's an unpleasant one, but it could be pleasant ones also. It could be happiness or excitement, but it's distracting you from performing. So you might be angry, you might be anxious, you might be sad, you might be confused, or you might be super happy. But all of those have in common that now you are really preoccupied with dealing with that emotion, and you're not actually giving your full attention to what you need to be doing. So your attention you're distracted, so to speak, and you have no ability to allow that to be there and redirect your attention. Okay, so that's one of them. So those are internal distractions. Then the same thing happened with external distractions, right? You can see certain athletes really have a difficult time dealing with somebody outside of when they're playing or running or whatever, fighting, whatever they're doing, and they get distracted by those people outside and they can't return their attention. So the commonality is that a lot of times when athletes can't perform, it's because they're distracted by something that's inside or outside, and they are incapable of dealing with that and returning their attention. So I noticed that, okay? And I noticed that in them. I saw it over and over and over. And I realized that, yeah, that's exactly my issue that I had also. It's exactly the same. I could not do it. And then I remembered, oh yeah, sometimes I would just have a thought. A thought would arise, one single thought, and it would completely throw me off the tracks. It was a constant loop of that thought, and that thought would cause me to experience certain emotions. And I was fully absorbed by that experience all of a sudden, and I was able to give very little attention to what I actually needed to be doing. Watching the ball, figuring out what the opponent is doing, and so forth. So once I realized that in all of these athletes, and then I realized that I had the exact same issue, then the step that I did was, well, now just because I can see it doesn't mean I can do it still. So I decided, okay, once I figured out that that is a skill that I can develop, I turned to developing those skills for myself. Just not even as a coach, but that I can learn to deal with adversities. And I put in all the time that I could into learning to deal with difficult emotions, learning to deal with distracting thoughts, learning to deal with distracting external situations with people that are, annoying, people that are unpleasant, or just the elements, wind, temperature, whatever it might be. So once I started developing those skills, I realized how difficult that is. I was like, okay, this is a little bit more challenging than most people think. Most people feel like, yeah, once I try to do this, I should somewhat successfully be able to do that. Yes. But that's impossible, actually. So the amount of time and training it took to get to just a level where there was a noticeable difference, I'm talking about a couple of years now, until I was really like, yeah, okay, now this is not just I'm sitting and I'm trying to pay attention to something and meditating and, okay, now I'm able to focus better. But actually in real life, when I am performing, now I'm distracted, I'm trying to return my attention and I can. That took some time. And once I realized, however, that I had that skill and it improved to a degree where I was like, okay, now living my life personally, now coaching, now performing myself is completely different than when I was a player. We're not even in the same ballpark anymore. I was like, this is what I want to coach. This is what I want to give to everybody.
So did someone introduce you to the mindfulness practice before? Or was this something that you had just been researching on your own? And then how did you feel? Did you feel apprehensive to then introduce this to your athletes? Because so the first part is, did someone introduce you to the mindfulness practice? And if so, how did they introduce it to you? If not, how did you then discover this mindfulness practice? And then when you started practicing more, how did you then introduce it to the athletes that you were then working with?
So my first introduction, which I didn't know at the time, was a friend of mine from Hawaii. Amazing guy. He talked about it in a very spiritual way, though, however, because his teacher and the one that he kind of really resonates with is somebody who is teaching without trying to teach you any specific techniques or methodologies. That guy's name is Krishnamurti. And that's kind of a challenge, to teach somebody something and telling them, though, you don't need to do anything. Okay. But that is one way to teach somebody, and it resonates actually with a lot of people. The issue is just it doesn't resonate with everybody. So it's like that was my first contact. But I had no idea like what that was. I was just like, this is something completely different. Like, what is he talking about? But it resonated with me also, but not to the degree where I was like actually able to do something. The next instance was that I started to have myself moments of clarity, of awareness, where I was dropping into equanimity without having priorly practiced, but because that was just something, you know, that happens to you sometimes, also because you're kind of evolved with that subject. Third instance was more definite, where a client of mine actually started to tell me these metaphors and stories, where I was like, okay, now I was like, this is now as if you're talking about something that is like actually my experience. This is not like some general thing that you're talking about. This is like the story that you just told is like you're talking about me personally. That was a little bit like, whoa. So that were actually stories from Eckhart Tolle.
Great ride. I love Eckhart Tolle's books, man.
Oh yeah.
Some of this stuff is kind of hard to decipher, man, but I love his reading, man. I love many of his books.
Yeah. So he actually comes from the, like, Krishnamurti is also one of Eckhart Tolle's big teachers. So once I got into that a lot, I started to have, things started to be very different for me. I started to develop those skills in different ways, and things really started to shift. But at that point, I was not introducing that, number one, because I didn't have the skills yet developed. And number two, I did not understand myself, like how to communicate this. You can experience certain things, like a coach or a player. You can play amazing tennis, but you can't explain that to somebody. So those are two different skill sets. And it was clear to me that to athletes, because I was an athlete myself, you can't talk to an athlete, or generally speaking, the way Eckhart Tolle talks. That's a different subgroup you're talking about. You need to athletes, you need to talk in their language. You need to talk about skill development. So that's when I was introduced. I mean, I'm skipping forward. We are talking about the process of 10 years or something now, right? To my mentor and my teacher, Shinzen Yang. And he has developed this methodology of systematically approaching different sub-skills of your experience with different techniques and being able to combine those exactly like you do it in science, exactly how you teach somebody in sports if it's scientifically backed. And that was the big breakthrough when I was then able to translate his language into sports language. And that was kind of what took me on the road.
So then how does mindfulness affect athletes, and then how do you practice mindfulness in sports? Because we're starting to see, as I said in the beginning, many athletes, tapping into mindfulness practices. LeBron James now has a playlist on Calm. One of the apps that I use Calm, Headspace, and there are other apps out there. But then how does mindfulness affect athletes, and then how do you practice mindfulness in sports?
Well, the way it affects athletes is by first, you need to realize that these skills that, when we talk about mindfulness, we're talking about certain skills that are active, and everybody has those skills. And because it is a set of skills, set of 3 skills, basically, some people have them more naturally developed than others. Just like somebody might be faster than another person without ever training. So you're just naturally gifted at one or the other. But because people don't realize that it is skills, they don't put any time into developing them in a systematic and consistent way. So for a lot of people, those skills don't develop over time the way many other skills that they have develop. So once you understand that there's a certain set of skills that you already have, then you need to understand and learn how are you actually using these skills if you are performing well, and what is happening if you're not performing well? How are these skills leaving you? What's not working for you? Like I was saying before, your ability to pay attention to what matters. Your ability to be able to pay attention to something when there is a distraction going on, right? So when you're getting anxious or you're nervous and you're standing on the free throw line in basketball and there is 10,000 people right in front of you shaking and making noise. So there's external distractions, visual distraction, auditory distraction because it's very loud, right? And then you have internal distractions because you might be actually a little bit shaking, you might be feeling the anxiety. So being able to now pay attention to the only thing that matters, which is feeling your arm, trying to relax it, feeling the ball and focusing on the basket and the way you need to throw it, shoot it, that is the only thing that you need to pay attention to. And in order to be able to do that, 3 skills come into play. The first one is concentration. So concentration we define as your ability to pay attention to whatever you want. That is sustained attention, executive attention. So these distractions, right? Not being distracted is concentration. The second one is being able to really feel the ball, really feel what you need to do. That is clarity, awareness. You need to be aware of how your arm feels in order to be able to adapt it in some way. And you need to have coolness or openness, acceptance, equanimity of these difficult distractors that you're experiencing, because if you can't be equanimous with them, then you will be fighting them or you will be suppressing them. So you will be paying attention to them again.
Go ahead, finish what you're saying.
Yeah, so this is how once athletes understand, oh yeah, this is actually this skill I'm using in this way and this skill I'm using in that way. So you need to become very precise and explain to them in their sport, in their situation, this is how you use the skill. This is when you use the skill. This is when the skill is not working for you. And they understand like, oh yeah, I'm doing this all the time and I'm trying to do it and it's not working. Then you can unlock, or they unlock for themselves, intrinsic motivation in terms of, oh, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to pay attention to throwing the free throw when I'm nervous and there's 5,000 people yelling at me. And then you need to get into techniques that are specific for that athlete. You know, not just general techniques that are very good for general skill development, like breathing techniques, but much more detailed in terms of when you're standing on the free throw line, this is what you can do mentally, and this will help you.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you talked about some of the benefits, because I shared the benefits of just mindfulness and meditation just in my practice. But some of the other ones in the sports where I definitely want to elevate is improves the ability to control thoughts and emotions, increase connection between the brain and body, helps with managing physical discomfort, reduces performance stress, which you talked about, better endurance, helps you cope and adapt when things are not going as planned. And we know that happens all the time in sports, develops control and maintains balance and performance, and then commitment, learn ways to connect and reach your goals. One of the people that I really have a lot of respect for, you know, I'm from Chicago, and someone who introduced mindfulness in such a subtle way is probably one of the greatest coaches out there. His name is Phil Jackson. You know, Phil Jackson writes about sports and Zen. Phil Jackson was so cool as he was introducing this we talked about during the era of the Jordan era, and he was really, really adamant about that because he was taking a lot of heat, and it really came into, it reminded me of when the documentary about the Bulls came out, The Last Dance, and I remember at the time I didn't get it. I was in high school, but I was like, Phil Jackson was really, really ahead of the game when it came to using mindfulness for training athletes to not only just to improve sports performance, but also just to improve their relationships with one another. So with that being said, mindfulness is being adopted by the mainstream very quickly. You know this better than I do. Does this help or hinder the movement of mindfulness and meditation right now? Because I'm always concerned, man, when I see so many people, quote unquote, Chris, jumping on the bandwagon. I'm like, and then I'm seeing all this, money. And, when you look at these amazing apps, two I listed, like I said, Headspace, Calm, I read Mindful magazine. But are you concerned with where it's going right now in the mainstream?
Overall, no. I can just generally say I'm not concerned, no. And I want to kind of highlight what you just said with Phil Jackson, because Phil Jackson is the prime example. He is one of the great coaches in history in any sport. And one of the great skills of a coach, of anybody, is to know what you know and to know what you don't know. So as much as he was involved in spirituality, in Zen, in Native American spirituality also, yes, he knew that he is not knowledgeable enough in terms of coaching these skills. So he brought in actually George Munford. And George Munford is one of the great mindfulness coaches for athletes. So he was, even though he was not in The Last Dance, which is a little bit of a pity, I feel like. I
was surprised too, because he made reference to it, but I was really surprised that he wasn't in there either.
Yeah. So he was really the one who was introducing mindfulness to the athletes in speaking their language. Like I said before, their sub-language. You're talking about very different ways, and you develop those skills differently than if somebody, is struggling with life challenges. You need to adapt now these skills for your performance. The basketball players, when you have hundreds of millions of fans, like they're going through different struggles than somebody who lost a job. So you need to adapt these things. And he did that with the Bulls and then the Lakers, basically with Phil Jackson all of his life, really. So, and that is basically one of the aspects why I'm not worried. Number one is because there's so many amazing teachers, coaches out there in these different fields, and number two is because we have the scientific community now that is really putting a lot of time and effort into trying to realize and prove what works, where does mindfulness help you, and where does it not help you, right? You need to be aware of its limitations also. Of course, it's not like a magic pill that will solve every one of your issues. It's just one huge beneficial additional skill set that will help you. And when we continuously work together with the scientists, the teachers and the coaches, and people don't make claims about what this can do and what this don't do and will solve all of your problems, but we stay realistic and keep adapting what we teach according to what science shows. So we improve the practices, so it's the mindfulness practice is informed by science continuously. Then I think we're just doing something, while we might be doing mistakes here and there, of course, we will be doing something that will be very beneficial for athletes and humankind in overall.
Well, I'm so glad that you elevated, George Munford. For those that don't know, George Munford worked with Kobe, he worked with Jordan, he worked with the Lakers, the Bulls, the Knicks. I mean, he is a mindfulness expert when it comes to sports. So you definitely want to encourage you all to check his book out. So Chris, I am an athlete and I'm interested in finding more about mindfulness to support my practice, whatever that sport is, be it tennis, bowling, what have you. What are some of the steps that I should take to maybe find a teacher, an app, a book? What are some of the steps that I should take? Or let's back up. What are some questions I should be asking myself as an athlete to really find out, how do I take my performance to a next level? And I want to include mindfulness in that process or practice, rather.
Yeah, that's exactly the same approach that I would also recommend. It's like you want to ask yourself, what do you actually want? What is your goal? If this is something that resonates with you, you feel like mindfulness, you have heard something, however much or little, maybe this is your first time you're exposed to this and you're like, this sounds like, yeah, I want to be able to deal with anxiety. That sounds interesting to me. I think that would help me. I want to be able to just focus longer on what I need to. Maybe anxiety is not one of my issues. Maybe it's more like I have physical pain. That's an issue of mine. And obviously the physical pain itself, you need to deal with by physical therapy, training, but maybe you have a certain reaction to it that is really just annoying to you, or you're worried about the future. So if that is something you want to deal with, then you want to kind of also figure out, like, what kind of personality do you have? You know, it's important because even though there's many different teachers that are saying the same thing, they're saying it in such a different way that one person at might seem like they're saying something that is almost contrary to what the other person is saying. So you do want to find a teacher or a system of teaching that resonates with you, that when you listen to it, you're like, yeah, I know what they're talking about. You might not be able to do it yet, but like you can feel like this is something that's right for you. And if you find that, then like you said, I would highly encourage you to have a coach. That does not necessarily mean you need one-on-one coaching every week. That's where all of the websites and apps come into play right now that are so helpful. You can have digital coaching. You can, just have a program like the one you can find on different apps. Some of them I'm working on actually right now, where it's also, financially speaking, which is important, very affordable. In order for us to be able to help a lot of people, it can't be very expensive. You can't have one-on-one coaching for hundreds of dollars for people. Like, most people can't afford that. So, figure out what resonates with you, play around a little bit. You can go to an app like Calm, you can go to an app like Headspace, which are, what they have in common is basically they don't teach you really how to do these things, but you just follow along, okay? And then following along for a certain amount of time will develop those skills, but it doesn't necessarily develop your intellectual understanding of how to do it, which means you might not be able to do it by yourself without the app. But that's okay. Maybe you don't want to know. Maybe you're not interested in that. So you just keep using an app. Maybe you're the person who wants to be able to understand it and do it themselves. If that's the case, then you want to do something a little bit more thorough, like an 8-week course, a 10-week course, a program that teaches you these skills with an individual, and then you can integrate that into your life. So that's what I would say to that.
So how can my listeners get in contact with you if they want to work with you?
So in my case, if you're interested in this systematic approach that's really tailored for athletes, then go to my website, mindsizesports.com. And there's a lot of info in there. You can reach out to us if you have any questions. We have also a Facebook group where you can, interact and ask questions. On top of that, how other users or other athletes have been kind of using the system. And then you can find out. It's like a 8-week program where you learn different techniques and different strategies. And then you will learn how to use them for yourself. So it's not a one kind of fit for everybody, but it's much more foundational kind of skills that you develop and understanding of techniques that you can integrate when you're playing tennis or when you're anxious or when you're experiencing this and that. So that's the basic essence of what that program is teaching you.
Wow, Chris, you provided us with a wealth of information. I appreciate you for joining me in the bomb shelter. And all the athletes that are out there who are quarantined, this is a great time to pick up a mindfulness practice, to really understand the connection between mindfulness, sports, and performance. There's a direct connection with, what's in your mind. And I tell people all the time, mindfulness and meditation is simple, but it's not easy. And so having a coach like Chris will really help you out. So Chris, thanks for joining me. But before you leave out of here, my favorite part of the show is called our Super Bomb Questions. It's a part 2 of our show. It's an opportunity for me to ask you some questions that my listeners may want to know a little bit more about you. Like maybe some of the students that you have working with you, they may want to know some of these things that you haven't shared them with you. So you ready? It's called the Super Bomb Questions. You ready, Chris?
Ready.
All right, let's go. What is your favorite word?
Love.
What is your favorite quote?
I'm going to butcher this a little bit. It's from Einstein, but it goes more or less something like, everybody is a genius, but if you live your life thinking you are, wait, how did it go? If you judge your ability of climbing a tree, even though you're a fish, you will live your life thinking you are a failure.
Yep, I love that quote. What is your spirit animal?
I mean, I have to say, because it's my name, Straka is actually called, what is that bird that steals all the diamonds and it's black and white?
There's a bird that steals diamonds?
Yes, like all the shiny objects. I forgot.
A bird that steals shiny.
Yes, that's me. I mean, since it's my name, I got to go with that.
Are you talking about a bow? Is it called a bowbird or magpies?
Magpie, exactly.
Magpie.
Straka is magpie in Czech. Magpie.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yes. All right. I learned something new, man. What brings you to tears of joy?
That's a great question. When I am in a situation where I feel real compassion, deep compassion for whatever reason, whatever the situation, deep connection, compassionate connection with another human being, happens often with my wife. Where I will cry because of joy, and she will be like, "What? What?" I'm like, "I'm just happy." Yeah, that's what brings me.
All right. So, what brings you to tears of sorrow?
When I feel the pain of somebody else.
What do you wish you had more time to do?
Spend time with my wife.
I know that story, man. What is the best or most worthwhile investment you've ever made?
Meditate.
Walk us through your morning routine after all the biological things come through. What's your morning routine like?
I drink a coffee. I sit down over there. I do a 20-minute breathing exercise called tummo breathing, where you kind of it's a combination of hyperventilating and holding your breath to kind of activate your autonomic nervous system, and it has a lot of benefits. Then I meditate. Then I work out for 30 minutes. Then I eat breakfast. No, then I shower, then I eat breakfast. And then I start doing things like this, have podcasts, work on certain programs that I do. And then I have my first client at 10.
Love it. If you were in the Mr. America talent competition, what would your talent be?
My first thought was I would be in the Mr. America talent competition. I would sprint out of there. Was my first thought that came to mind. My talent would be to speak off the cuff.
And you did a great job today, Chris. Chris Straka, I want to thank you, man, for investing in athletes, investing in all of us, bringing mindfulness practice to sports all over the country, man. I want to thank you for what you're doing, man. And thank you for joining me today, man. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
It's been a real pleasure for me also. Thank you very much. You're doing a fantastic job. This show is amazing and a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see more of it.
Thank you. And I also want to thank my amazing engineer, my Haitian brother, Alexander Blanc, my African sister, Nicole Klempaka, my producer. Thank you for getting me all the research and all the people that I'm working with. I want to thank Supremacy for our theme music. And I cannot not thank you all enough for listening to Sound Bombing. Do something for someone other than yourself today. If you want to know more about me, go to drdrlds.com. If you want to pick up the merch, you see I'm rocking the meditation shirt. Go to the website. Do something for someone other than yourself today. You've been listening to Sound Bombing. Peace. Thank you.